Hello folks, welcome back to the channel. Well, we got that no-till done. As you've seen in the last video, we got moved back home now. So we got 40 acres right here by the main farm, and then we got 100 acres down in the river bottom. And that'll be it. So with a little luck, today's Thursday, the 13th I think, so by tomorrow we should be done. We could get it all done today if we wanted, but that ground in the river bottom, we're gonna go down after I get this planted, take both cultivators and get it opened up, and then let it lay the rest of today and maybe even part of tomorrow, and then plant it. So hopefully everything will go good and we'll get her done here. They're saying maybe heavy rain moving in again this weekend, starting like maybe Saturday night, and then rain for like the next 7 days, or at least a chance of rain. Don't sound like much sun, so don't sound like next week's going to be fit to do a whole heck of a lot. So hopefully we don't have any trouble and we'll get her done here. Finally back into a little bit of dust again. Been a while since we've seen any of that. I'll try and show you guys something here. I don't know if you'll be able to see it on camera or not, but see how over on the west side of this field there's some light soil in there? And then you get over here, boy, she's blacker than the ace of spades. This is what we call black muck, and it's almost like a clay texture. You know, you get up north in that Drummer Flanagan, that stuff's almost like potting soil. It's real loose and fluffy and just really good soil. And this here's good soil too, but it's not like that up there. This is real rubbery, and man, you don't ever want to work this too deep in the spring because it'll just come up in big chunks and balls, and whatever it looks like the first time you work it is what you're stuck with the rest of the year. I don't care what you run across this thing. That first pass is what you will have until the following spring. So it's different. It can be pretty hard to farm, but it'll produce. And the funny part is this farm is called Roberts Pond, which the family that owned it several years ago, their last name was Roberts. But the pond part come from, if you get out a plat book from like the late 1800s, early 1900s, all this was underwater. I mean, it truly was a pond. That's where the black soil comes from. But things have really changed out through here in the last 100 years. I mean, this ground is so flat, and the water has to go such a long way to get off of it. It lays wet pretty bad. You know, if we get a 2-3 inch rain, this will be underwater on this east half for sure. And that's just the way it is. There's nothing you can do about it. There's nowhere to run tile. I mean, you'd have to run tile forever across neighbors and everything else to get it to drain, immediately. And that's not an option. So it's one of them deals you just got to kind of fight it, hope for the best. It's sort of one of them deals kind of like this year, even though we've been farming for a month. It's one of them farms you got to be careful. Watch your forecast. If there's a big rain coming in, you're better off not planting it, because I mean you'll end up, most of it will be okay, but you're going to have 5-6 acres that drown out because it sets underwater and there's nothing you can do about it. So some years you can farm it early, but most years you end up kind of waiting until the tail end once you get out of them big heavy rains like you get in April and the first part of May. So we'll cross our fingers with wet weather coming up in the forecast that we don't get a flood. So we'll just have to see. But you can kind of see this is all light soil up here, and that's actually going uphill a little bit as you go west. Not a bunch, but it's definitely a lot different. I'm gonna jump out and check my depth again. Boy, this black dirt, it can be kind of a bastard to get your depth right. Some years you gotta go in deeper, some years you don't wanna get it in too deep. It's just, I don't know, it's kind of tough to do. You wanna keep an eye on it, that's for damn sure. Come on, where you at? But you see how that's just like, it's just like cheese. Check this out. Look at that. It's just like a... And so is what I'm getting at. If you come through there with a field cultivator sweep and you peel that shit up, you're gonna have clods out here the size of your fist, and this stuff just dries immediately. Like, see that clod there, how hard that is? And so if them clods are that big when they come up the first time, you will never ever get them beat back out. It'll be that way the rest of the year. So this is ground you do not want to get on it too soon. But you see, the bad part is usually that planter does a good job of putting seed in the ground. I mean, if it's hard, it can get it in. But here, that's so rubbery underneath it's almost like you can't hardly keep it shallow enough because it just wants to suck in, because it's, you know, I wouldn't call it muddy underneath, but it's just, see, if you dig down 3 inches, look at that. I mean, it's just different. It's like I say, it's not the black soils like you would normally associate with Illinois. It's muck. So yeah, I mean, they're down in there an inch. Some places a little more even. So right there. So yeah, right there where my finger is, that's how deep they are. And the thing you really got to watch on this shit is it'll dry out as deep as you work it just almost immediately on a day like today with bright sunshine, a little bit of wind. And you know, you always want to put beans in moisture, and that's why another reason why you don't want to work it too far ahead of the planter, because then it'll be dried out as deep as you worked it, and then you're out of moisture. Then you got to end up putting your beans in 2 inches deep just to hit moisture. So it's a trick to farm, but boy, it'll produce. 2012, the field here right behind me was in corn that year. And the rest of our corn was from 0 bushel. Well, I shouldn't say 0. We didn't have any that was a complete loss, but I mean, we literally had 5, 10, 15, 20 bushel corn that year. And it was planted early that year in March, and it made like 120 bushel the acre that year, where everything else was literally 15 or 20. So it'll definitely produce, but boy, you got to be careful. You can't let just anybody come over and work this that's never been on ground like this. Luckily, you know, Kevin's brother Larry that helps me, you know, he's been doing it his whole life, so he does a pretty good job. You know, sometimes you don't work it very deep at all. Just come in and knock the top off and let the planter do the job of putting it in. So I don't know, we'll see what happens, but it's definitely rubbery underneath for sure. You can feel it in the tractor seat even. There's no way to do it, but I wish you guys could sit in this tractor seat and feel this. It's just like driving on ice. You see how them front wheels are kind of juggling back and forth just a little bit? Normally that would never happen when you're planting. But when you look back at the dirt, you know, it's not like I'm rutting it up or cutting in or whatever. It's just the fact that underneath it's just kind of rubbery. And that's just the way this ground can be some years. And these damn planters are so heavy. I've ran into this several times. You know, going back and forth in the field's fine, and then you get to the end, you pick the planter up, and God, it sinks in 6 inches where you turn. But, you know, there ain't nothing you can do about it. It's just the way it is. That is one downfall to these center fill planters, and I don't think it matters whether it's an International, John Deere, Kinsey, whatever. They are so damn heavy. I don't remember the exact weight. I'd have to look in the owner's manual, but that thing weighs somewhere in the neighborhood of 30,000 pounds when it's empty. You know, so then you go putting 5,000 to 6,000 pounds of seed in it, or 1034O on the tongue. That stuff, that's 425 gallon. That stuff weighs 11.6 pounds per gallon. So I mean, you can get a lot of weight on one of them planters in a big hurry. But you'll find out pretty quick when you run one. If you ever get in a wet spot in the field, do not raise that thing up, because all it does is just pushes the wheels in the ground a foot deep, and there you sit. So you're better off. I know it makes a mess, and that's usually the complete opposite of what you would do with an old planter. But you're better off to leave that thing in the ground and try to get drugged through it. Otherwise, that sumbitch will stop you dead if it's full of seed and you go to raise it up. It'll just bury it to the frame. So, little tidbit, if you don't have one of these and are thinking about getting one, if you ever get in a wet spot, do not raise it up. And the bad part on this low ground like this too is, even though it's good soil for the last, what's it been now, 5, 6 years, we've had all these wet years just back to back to back. And for years and years and years, this was always the best crops you would produce on this black dirt. Like, you know, 20 years ago, because it seemed like we had normal summers then. About the middle of June, the rain had shut off and wouldn't turn back on until July. But this stuff would always perform in that kind of weather. But when you get wet weather like we've had, this will consistently be your worst crops. It just, you can't get the water off of it fast enough, and it just dings the yields. So it's definitely been a flip the last 5, 6, 7 years, whatever it's been now. The ground that would normally, your whole life before, has done really well, has actually done poor. And the ground that's, you know, kind of rolling timber soil that used to just burn up in the summertime has done really, really good. So it's just done a complete 180 flip. But I don't know, I guess if these weather patterns ever change back to what they was when I was a kid, then these soils will shine again, but time will tell. Well, we got the beans planted, so we're gonna jump on the field cultivator now and run down to the river bottom and get that ground worked. I think it's gonna need to lay the rest of today and air a little bit, so that's why I'm not too wound up about taking one cultivator down and then planting right behind it. So we'll just get it opened up and see. I mean, I'm not saying I won't go down there this evening and plant it, but it's not looking like it. I'll probably just wait and do it in the morning. So let's head down there and get started. So down here in the river bottom, we got what we call these sloughs. This area right here that ain't been worked has been underwater for several months, and the river's just right there at them trees. And once they get the river dropped so low, then boy, it'll suck that water right out. These things can go from having water in them to being completely bone dry, able to farm in like a 3 or 4 day period. So it's kind of weird, but looks like we're going to get to farm most of it this year. But it's pretty common to lose this even after you plant it. So we'll see what happens. Well, with a little bit of luck, this is the last day of the 2021 planting season. We got basically 100 acres to do today. So, as long as we don't get a flood here in the next couple of days and things go according to plan, we should be done. I hope we don't have to run into any replant, but you never know. I mean, we'll have to give these, 2 to 3 weeks to see if they're going to make it. But we just won't know till then. These spots out here that was really wet when we were working this yesterday, I was able to go back when we got the field finished and was able to get work through them. Those look dark. It's not wet. That's just a soil type there. But as you can see, it's all grayed off and ready to plant. That's how fast that'll change. I think in the 14 years that I've been farming down here, we've only took 2 crops out of that slough. And I don't remember the years now, but there's been several times we've waited and planted through it and then got a rain shortly thereafter and lost it then. There's been times we planted the rest of the field and left it, come back 3 weeks later, planted it, only to get a rain a week later and lose it again. So, I don't know, more often than not, you end up not getting a crop out of it, but maybe this will be the year. We'll see. This particular field here is the only field we got that is non-insurable. I mean, it is, but it's cost prohibitive. So we just don't insure it. The 40 acres I was just on They're half mile up the road, that's insurable, and then the 29 acres across the ditch that I've got planted to corn, it's insurable also. But this field here, laying right along the riverbank like that, you can't insure it, which, you know, I've literally seen 4 feet of water over this field before, so I guess it's kind of understandable why. So this one here, you're just rolling the dice on. So that's the Kaskaskia River right there. And I don't know what it would be, 7, 8 mile upriver, whatever it is. There's a dam there on Lake Shelbyville, so they can somewhat control the flooding down here. I'd say more often than not, it does not benefit the farmer, because they make all the calls on that dam on the gates. That's all made out of St. Louis, so they don't really take the farmers into account for the most part. They might a little bit, but they tend to do what they want. But overall, I mean, it's not a huge deal, but I don't know, sometimes they can get some real clowns that are calling the shots on that, and it doesn't work very well for farming down here. But overall, we've never lost a crop totally, you know, where it's just a complete loss. So I don't know. Well, we just got about 4 acres left roughly, and we'll be done. But I gotta shuffle some seed from one side of the planter to the other. So show you how I do that. So as you can see, a little bit in there, fair amount more in this side. Now, since this is my last field of the season, I want this planter as empty as possible when we're done. So I've got some bags here, but I'm not gonna go opening them unless I absolutely have to. So I'm gonna shuffle some seed out of this one tank into the other, and I think that'll be enough to get us done. It'll be real close. So to do that, you take your handy dandy little floor sweeper. You ever see people use these at McDonald's? Sweep trash into it and then pick it up? That's what I use. Got me a broom mounted up there to sweep it all down and all that good stuff. So it's kind of slow, but usually you're not moving large volumes of seed. You're just moving, you know, a few pounds here or there. So it works pretty decent. Going to be really close on having enough seed in the planter to get done. So we'll just plant along here and see how it comes out. I've got 6 bags up there on the platform, so I mean, I got plenty of seed to actually do it, but I just assume she's totally empty by the time we're done. So we'll see what happens. Well, we made her by the skin of our teeth. We didn't have to add any more seed to it. So planter's empty. We come out just right. So that's a wrap on the 2021 planting season. So let's take this rig home and see what else we got going on. I always kind of hate this little lull here when you get done planting, because you can't really clean nothing up yet in case you got to replant. So you just kind of sit on your hands, wait until you see if the crop makes it or not. So I don't know. Not much we can do, I guess. Well, I got the new combine home. It's new to us. This is a 2020 S760.